This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, Uhura goes back to school.
Hello everybody, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review, critique, philosophy, whatever we feel like podcast.
Woo.
My name is Gepwin. I'm joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Izix.
Hi.
And this week we watched a weird one, odd, and seems to be the basis of the later movie.
So basically, Star Trek motion picture, but in the 60s.
Yeah, it is called The Changeling.
Wait, Odo's in this one? Wait, no, he's not.
This is because of a very awkwardly forced reference
A little bit,
that I was unable to actually work into the synopsis because it's just a weird aside that they go into for no reason.
We need to have a reason to justify the name of the episode. Let's do this.
Yeah, basically, he just goes on this long tangent of it's like that old Earth myth about fairies who would steal human babies and impersonate them.
Which did remind me that there is a World of Darkness, book that's basically about that. But that's irrelevant right now.
You could have done something with that, maybe. I don't know why this is called The Change. Why didn't they just call it Nomad?
Well, that would make sense.
Fine name.
Unless they were planning to have a different episode at some point called Nomad, but then
they didn't.
They didn't.
Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. This episode was written by John Meredith Lucas, who is actually best known as a Star Trek writer. He did a few contemporary shows, but nothing that took off as much as Star Trek.
Yes. Other things he was involved in was like some Westworld and The Fugitive.
There is only one guest star this episode because we have a bottle episode today.
Yeah, no alien planets, just on the Enterprise, and I guess technically looking out of the Enterprise, but mostly on the Enterprise.
Yep, we are joined this time by the voice of Vic Pern, who did some other voice work from the time. So.
He was in Johnny Quest.
That's true, yeah. Old time radio. I didn't know that was an actual term. The Wikipedia entry on him literally says was a regular performer on old time radio.
Well, I guess. It's radio that's from olden times, I guess. So I guess it's descriptive.
I suppose it makes enough sense everyone knows what you mean. It's we're a couple episodes into the second season now, and I'm noticing the episodes' plots themselves have not improved.
Generally, yes,
but the level of writing and character interaction and dialogue has greatly improved.
Yes, it's these are kind of like people now. It's kind of weird.
It's night and day, and I started enjoying it more. I see why people talk about original Star Trek in the way they do a little more now, even though the actual plots are still nonsensical, badly written, and slow.
Because now we at least have more interesting people to be sort of presenting these kind of hokey plots with. And we're like, oh, I guess I can sort of connect to this person. I think, maybe this, is for me, the tipping point where things sort of, started markedly improving was in a Space Seed where McCoy's like, yeah, I just cut my throat, man. Do it.
Yeah, he had a character. He wasn't just drunken Dr. Man.
Yep.
I mean, he's still kind of just drunken Dr. Man, but at least he's not yelling about Scotty hitting on people in this episode.
That was still so weird. But I guess they needed somebody to do it, and McCoy was the only one that made any sense for.
Now, I think this is going to wind up being probably around the same as some other episodes, but I just want to comment that this is actually the shortest synopsis I've ever written, because so much of this episode is slowly walking through hallways with no dialogue.
Yes, or floating through hallways,
Yeah, as the case may be. We join the Enterprise as it is responding to a distress call from some people called the Malarians.
I hope we meet these guys. They seem to be in a bit of a dire straits, and we're going to be going out there and helping them out and solving all their problems, aren't we?
They're apparently all dead.
Oh, never mind then.
Their planet is now completely devoid of all life. Just then, the shields snap on, which is apparently something they do by themselves.
Well, I guess it's probably a good idea if like you're being fired upon, your shield, your ship's like smart enough to like go, oh crap, let's not die now.
It's a little thing, but it was just weirdly interesting that it's like the shields came on, we must be in danger. Not the ship has told us we are in danger and the shields came on.
Yes.
A powerful bolt of energy strikes the shields of the ship, which apparently take 20% damage to the shields, and Spock says they can take 4 more hits before the shields go down because math.
Ouchies.
It was interesting that they decided to have simple but accurate math.
Yeah, it helps the audience follow along a little bit more with all the the technical stuff here.
They managed to kind of find whatever is shooting at them after it hits them a couple more times. They hit it with a photon torpedo, but it apparently just no-sells it and takes no damage.
Yeah, as you do. I can do that too, right? You can do that as well, right?
They have this thing that, like, the energy blast that they are hit with and, can survive 4 of is apparently as powerful as 90 of their photon torpedoes.
Yes.
But then this thing tanks 1 torpedo, and they're like, oh my god, that's impossible.
It's almost like it has some sort of shield.
After a couple more shots, their shields are down, and after he's figured out that he can't blow it up, Kirk decides that he's going to try to communicate with it.
Say hello.
He pleads with the other ship to stop shooting at them because they are peaceful, and it does.
Oh, that was convenient.
Spock scans it, discovers that the thing that was shooting at them is actually a somewhat cylindrical-shaped thing that's only about 1 meter or so long.
Wait, is this a monolith?
Maybe. It sends back a message in old-timey binary, apparently, requesting Kirk to repeat his original message. It does, and then it sends a message requesting that it can download the ship's translation software.
That's useful, being able to communicate and, oh god, what's it doing now?
Yeah, it breaks the ship. It downloads stuff so fast that it physically breaks the computer.
Which I guess is how computers work, I guess.
Yeah, well, later on, they're like giving some information from the computers, and it sounds like a really fast reel-to-reel player.
Yes.
So they're using some sort of version of reel-to-reel tapes, I guess.
Yeah, they do mention tapes a lot, so...
Yeah, they do. We were talking about this the other day. Like, magnetic tapes are a better archival storage medium, so maybe they just need it to last a while in space, so they reel-to-reel it.
Once you're out in space, or your vessel's getting exposed to all sorts of high-energy particles, and even with like futuristic shield stuff, it's not going to be stopping everything. So you want to make sure it's not going to be artificially degrading your hard drives or whatever so quickly. So yeah, maybe it's just the practical answer here.
After it breaks the computer, the thing that was firing at them announces itself as Nomad.
Hello, Nomad. Do you wander around and do stuff?
Basically. Kirk tells Nomad that they cannot board its ship because it is too small for them, being about 1 meter long.
Yes. I'm too big and huge and large.
Nomad yells non sequitur and tells them that it can just come aboard their ship.
Okay.
Kirk asks if it needs any special atmosphere, and it says no, which, of course, because anyone would say, no, I don't need any special atmosphere, just the one I breathe. Oh my god, why is there so much oxygen here? What are you doing to me?
Exactly. I thought you guys breathed methane too. Come on, jeepers.
He's asked for a special. Doesn't everyone just breathe argon? It's a bad choice as a noble gas, but oh well.
Maybe it's some sort of really bizarre chemistry they got going.
They beam aboard a satellite-looking thing with an antenna on top. It's kind of neat design. It floats around.
I thought it's pretty cool.
It has a protective screen that prevents them from scanning it, and Kirk asks if they want to leave their ship, I guess assuming that they are very tiny, like Lilliputians or something in there.
That'd be pretty cool, These little dudes running around, and you're like, well, we gotta make sure we don't step on these alien visitors, guys.
Did you ever see the Gargantuans from Buzz Lightyear, the TV show?
I do not believe so.
That was an amazing cartoon, and they had a whole race of aliens that were, like, themed somewhat Russian, called the Gargantuans, and the entire thing with them was they were all about 10 inches tall.
Nice. We're huge. You guys are bigger.
Yeah, that was the whole thing.
Gargantuans.
They were like weird radical isolationists who like thought they were better than everyone.
That does sometimes seem like Russia.
Yeah, that was such a great show, and no one saw Buzz Lightyear Star Command for some reason.
I saw a few bits of it here and there, but it was kind of, I guess, mostly on TV when I wasn't watching TV very much anymore. So
Nomad tells them that, in fact, it does not have any parasitic life forms in it.
oh, then that's good.
McCoy says he doesn't think that there's anyone in there, and Scotty agrees that, in his opinion, this thing is a machine.
You're saying we're talking to some sort of robot?
To prove the point, Nomad asks them what an opinion is. They do not give a very good answer.
Nope. Well, I have my opinion is that you suck. Not computable. What?
Kirk remembers that there was apparently an Earth probe named Nomad that was launched sometimes in the early 2000s, but it was presumed destroyed when it impacted with a meteorite.
Well, and was the impact intentional? We do that nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, they might have. They probably shouldn't, given this.
We have to shut down NASA quick, otherwise billions of people will be murdered in the future.
Nomad asks Kirk for their point of origin, and he decides to take Nomad off to see some star charts.
Oh, and it's like, yeah, don't worry about downloading. I'll just go with you. I was like, oh, okay.
Upon seeing a map of the home solar system, Nomad gets excited for a computer and asks Kirk to confirm that he is in fact from the third planet with the large single satellite that is known as Earth.
Yeah.
If he is, he must be Creator Kirk.
Yeah, I guess I am a creator.
And he goes, oopsies, I guess I didn't have to try to sterilize you. And Kirk goes, wait, what about sterilization now? But Nomad's too excited to have found his daddy.
Yes. So, it's obviously this robot's really into Kirk and wants to be be his friend and do everything he says.
Nomad finally admits that it is his programmed function to seek out biological infestation and to sterilize it.
So you're gonna seek out new life and new civilizations, then destroy them forever.
Yeah, like those dirty Malarians. Kirk is about to reveal that he is actually not the one who made the murder bot, but Spock, who's smarter than him, tells him not to and pulls him into the hallway.
Kirk, you don't want to get us all killed here, right?
Yeah, Spock thinks they need to keep up with this creator nonsense, because it seems like this thing came from Earth, and they need to, be able to not have it kill them. Mm-hmm. Back in the control room where Nomad is waiting for them, Uhura calls the ensign who's waiting around in there. And while he's checking on something, she begins to sing quietly to herself over the intercom. Seems like a odd thing for the communication officer to do, but plot-wise, they needed
it. In context of what's going on, she's kind of waiting for the ensign to sort of get back to with the report or whatever. And I guess she's just kind of bored. But then, the Nomad starts listening.
Yes, Nomad seems intrigued, and then floats off while the ensign's back is turned.
Sneaky robots.
Yeah, just leaves with the noisy doors.
I guess it's seeking out new life and new civilizations that are singing now.
Spock has gotten together some visual aids for us, and he gives a presentation on a man named Jackson Roy Kirk.
Is this related to the Boston Roy Kirks?
Maybe. He is apparently an erratic scientist who dreamed of building the perfect machine.
So I'm going to point out that saying that he's an erratic scientist is kind of like saying a tree that has bark. A lot of them do. It just comes with the territory.
Somewhat redundant.
As a scientist, I can say this.
He is the man who launched the original Nomad probe. And apparently at some point in the past, Nomad's memory circuits were damaged, and it now has confused Kirk and Roy Kirk, who was its true creator.
Yeah, it seems to have been sort of like combined with something else. Some other structure, some sort of probe, perhaps.
Except, yes, they realized that this probe was not very advanced, and it was not programmed to destroy life. It was programmed as an exploratory mission to find life.
And didn't have 90 photon torpedoes worth of firepower on board either back then.
They don't say that specifically, but probably
That's
not.
kind of implied, yeah.
Kirk is then informed that Nomad wandered away. As soon as he's informed of this, Nomad appears on the bridge, so they go off to be there.
Suddenly on the bridge, Nomad's here.
Nomad approaches Uhura, who is still singing. Nomad asks her what it's for.
Nomad has his antenna out this entire trip, and he pulls it back, and it's like, I need to use this to track down the singing, and now I need to extract the information from Uhura.
Yeah, she no one on this ship is prepared to have a philosophical definitional discussion of art with this robot.
You guys need like a philosopher on board or something. Come
Yeah,
on.
she just goes, I don't know, I like singing. That's what it's for. And then the robot downloads her brain.
Like, literally. This is mine now.
Beams something at her head. She goes all catatonic. Scotty runs up to stop it and gets killed. Actually confirmed killed. Yep, McCoy confirms this with a he's dead gem. Like an actual he's dead gem with the words and everything. Kirk is very upset about how, they killed Scotty, and also Uhura is blanked out. Nomad makes a sexist comment about Uhura being a mass of conflicting impulses. They just had to put one of those in there.
Yeah. You guys were so close.
You barely had women in this episode at all. You were so close to not being sexist this time.
Man.
Then Nomad asks Kirk if they want him to repair Scotty.
Are you a surgeon?
Nomad downloads all the anatomical information they have on board and then is taken to sickbay, where he does something, and Scotty just wakes up and goes, "Where am I?"
Well, you were dead for a little while. How you feel?
Kirk tells Nomad to also heal Uhura, but it can't because she is not damaged. He just downloaded all the knowledge in her brain.
So what does that mean? Do you just take out the memory engrams? Did you unwire her brain?
No one's sure. But
Yeah.
Spock theorizes that if only the knowledge was removed, then she may be able to be re-educated.
Over many, many, many years, like a normal person.
Perhaps. They must have way better schooling systems in the future.
I guess.
Kirk is just about to yell at Nomad for killing people and blanking out Uhura, but Spock stops him and sends Nomad away to the brig.
That's probably a good place to put him.
He explains that Nomad is a very, very logical entity and would probably not understand anger and may act unpredictably, because logically you have to act unpredictably to something you don't understand, I guess.
Well, I guess maybe it's more implying that it would act unpredictable to the crew there, that they don't know the full extent of its programming and what, how it would respond to various stimuli. And so it's sort of a perceptual unpredictability as opposed to an actual unpredictability.
Kirk announces his intentions to render Nomad harmless, and he sends Spock to examine it. In Nomad's new brig home, Spock is very frustrated because Nomad won't let him scan it, but Kirk orders Nomad to cooperate, and that is the extent of this scene.
Spock just kind of hanging out there. It's like, well, I can't do anything until Kirk comes in here to tell it what to do.
We have an aside back to sickbay where Nurse Chapel is teaching Uhura to read with a Dick and Jane book.
Yep, it's kind of an awkward scene.
School has not improved.
Yeah. It's nothing's improved, and we're all pretty slow, but I guess she's moving quickly, going from having no knowledge whatsoever about the world anymore to being able to read, kind of.
The other thing is she keeps switching over to reading in Swahili.
Mm-hmm.
And Chapel keeps having to correct her that she should be using English. So did they teach her Swahili first?
Maybe?
Or did Nomad only blank out the English part and she could still do everything just in Swahili?
That'd be kind of awesome, actually.
Yeah, that should have just been her character for the rest of the show.
Yeah, it's like, well, she speaks in Swahili now. She understands what we're talking about, but she's still a great communications officer.
Yeah, why don't they just do that? Like, Next Generation had that first season joke of having the blind man driving the ship. Why don't they have the person who doesn't speak English being the communication officer?
That'd be great.
In the brig, Spock decides that he needs to mind meld with Nomad. I guess works. They don't go into it, why it works.
It's a sufficiently advanced mind that it's can work with psychic powers.
Yeah, this is painful to watch and takes way too long, but the general gist is that Nomad, who was damaged by a meteor collision shortly after leaving Earth, drifted through space for an indefinite period of time until an alien...
years.
900 years, okay.
I'm just going to say that.
Until it then encountered an alien probe named Tanru. The two probes merged and somehow repaired each other, or just Nomad. It's unclear what Tanru was up to.
I have some ideas about that later, but yeah, keep going.
This increases Nomad's power and combined their programming, which apparently Nomad was programmed to seek out life, and Tanru was sent out to sterilize soil samples.
Kind of the same thing as wipe out all life, but, you know, when you combine them together, it gets even worse. Go from soil samples to, like, whole people.
Kirk is upset about Nomad being all crazy and space happy because it's bonded with him and thinks he's its mother. Spock says that this is basically the only thing that has kept them alive thus far.
You know, it wants a parent, and you're a parent, otherwise we'd all be dead. So, make sure to raise your kids well. And oh wait, I remember the last time you tried to be like a responsible father figure for somebody. We're all doomed, aren't we?
Yep. Nomad decides that it's time to go. The two guards in the brig try to stop it and are vaporized. Nomad then goes to engineering, where they make adjustments on the ship until it starts going over warp 11.
So I guess we've broken the warp 10 barrier already. Good job,
yeah,
guys.
the warp 10 barrier didn't exist until Star Trek Voyager.
Yes.
that was when they invented it, did a dumb episode with it, and then forgot about it forever.
Probably for the best. Because I remember, sort of an aside here, I remember in some of the tech specs during the Next Generation era, when I was a young person here, that like the Romulan warbirds could apparently do like warp 15, and that was like sort of a big deal.
I mean, even in the last episode of Next Gen, they have ships doing warp 13.
Yes. So I guess maybe it's a good thing for all the reason that Threshold just sort of ignored.
Well, they didn't have warp at this time. They didn't have it figured out at all. It was just numbers. Yep. It was just random numbers.
In fact, I remember earlier in the series, like warp 5 was like a big deal.
Now they've gone warp 11.
Yes, we've got up to 11, man.
Kirk arrives and orders Nomad to stop improving the ship because the ship is going to break.
But I was fixing things.
He also complains that Nomad killed guards.
Well, it did.
He's not as upset as when it killed Scotty.
You made some guards vanish. What'd you do with them? I vaporized them. Oh, I guess it's harder to fix. Well, I guess I won't worry about it then.
Nomad complains that the biological units on the ship are imperfect and he must destroy imperfection. Kirk then yells that he's also a biological unit and he is Nomad's creator. And Nomad goes, "You've given me a lot to think about."
All right, Dad, I guess I have to think about this. Are you saying I'm adopted?
Nomad decides to take a detour on the way back to the brig. Again, 2 guards try to stop it, and 2 guards are vaporized.
Well, we got a body count of 4 now.
Kirk gets an emergency call that Nomad has attacked McCoy in sick bay, and when they arrive, they find McCoy knocked out, so I guess he's nicer to McCoy than anyone else.
And Chapel's there as well, and they're fine. They're not vaporized.
Nomad was apparently there to download the personnel files, including Kirk's. Scotty then calls to tell them that Nomad turned off life support.
Oh no, our breathing air.
Kirk orders them to grab some anti-gravity lifts and meet him in engineering to confront Nomad.
I kind of like the anti-gravity lifts there. They're something I'd like to see more often in this sort of show.
It's just, why does this weigh nothing? We have an anti-gravity lift. Don't worry about it. It's not styrofoam. Kirk confronts Nomad in engineering. He says that he is programmed to destroy the imperfect biological beings until he's turned off life support so he can still have the ship. 'Cause the ship's fine. Needs some improvement, but, ship's fine.
He can work on the ship and make it better and, get over that whole structural flaw thing that'll make it explode at warp 12 or whatever.
Yeah, you hit a big problem in a second when it talks about how it's okay that it can fix the ship. Kirk asks if any imperfection must be destroyed, and Nomad says, yeah, of course, it's imperfection, and I must destroy imperfection. And Kirk goes, ha, you're imperfect, because I'm not actually your creator, so you made a mistake.
Dun, dun, dun.
Nomad, of course, bowing down to Kirk's superior machine logic brain, goes, oh no, error, I must blow myself up now.
Oh no, I am confused and I was wrong slightly, so I must self-destruct. Oh.
Yep, they take it to the teleporter, and as soon as Kirk is assured that it is planning to destroy itself, he beams it into space where it explodes.
Kablammers.
Back on the bridge, Spock congratulates Kirk on his logic. McCoy reports that Uhura is back to a college-level education after
she'll just be fine.
A day. Guess college is not what it used to be.
Yeah, college, you get your degree in, like, second grade. It's fine.
Spock laments about destroying Nomad because it would have been useful to study, but Kirk tells him that he is actually the one who's hurt because he lost a son.
The son he only kind of knew.
And obviously it was such a good surgeon. This is my son, the doctor.
As far as these kind of what the hell ending jokes go, this is one of the better ones, I'd have to say.
This is the best ending scene we've had so far.
Yes.
It is weird, given that they seem to go into a vaudevillian comedy routine at the end of every episode.
Yes.
Being that, it's a really good one.
I think my second favorite would be the one at the end of Shore Leave, because then everyone kind of comes back and they're like kind of being cagey about what they got up to.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just was like, well, I know who got laid, and
So, the Changeling. Yeah, at one point he gives this weird little speech about how, because we sent out a probe and got back this, it's like those fairies that would steal babies.
So our baby's been stolen and replaced by something kind of similar, but it's kind of spooky.
Oh, should we talk about perfection?
Yes.
Seems to be the only particular thing they reference in this episode. 90% of it is just Nomad wandering around the ship going, you're not perfect, I have to destroy you.
Trying to sort of figure out what's about, trying to sort of, I guess, contain its sort of logic and movement and failing at that. And so perfection.
I was doing a little bit of reading, and there seemed to classically, about since Greek times, and then brought back in during some Reformation thinking in the Renaissance, there seemed to really be like two particular schools of philosophical perfection thinking.
One of them, let me guess, one of them's loose and one of them's more strict.
Not exactly. It's a bit weird because one of them is fairly strict, but the other one is so inherently contradictory that it is by nature paradoxical. And I'm not sure why that's so accepted.
Maybe it's because there is an inherent habit in folks to not, sort of like, okay, perfection is this concept, but it seems so unrealistic. So maybe there's a more realistic version of it, and that inherently means it's going to be possible to exist in the real world, and thus is going to be much more messy than we sort of idealize perfection in.
Yeah, so that is kind of the first definition that was more popularized during the Renaissance and probably influenced a lot of our modern day kind of work ethic Protestant Reformation thinking, where imperfection is inherently perfect, which is in itself a paradox. But the idea there is that having something that is imperfect lets you work towards perfecting it. And that in itself, that process of seeking perfection is perfect.
More of a process as opposed to a state of being.
A little bit. It's a little more processy than an actual state of being. The other is something that is perfect negates change. Because if it is perfect, it cannot change in any way lest it cease being perfect.
There is no way to become more perfect. You are already perfect.
Any change at all means it's no longer perfect.
So in that case, it seems to be implying that Nomad thinks of itself as unchanging perfect as opposed to process.
This was interesting because I got into a pretty long discussion yesterday with someone about these kind of different definitions of perfection. And they raised a very interesting point that they feel that the unattainable, the perfection negates change, is inherently unattainable, unimaginable, completely unreal concept, is in fact much more useful than a realistic version of perfection that we find achievable. And that the kind of idea actually gels very, very well with the text of the episode. Because if you have something that you assume is an achievable perfection, it can lead to some very dangerous consequences by people who feel that they either have achieved or are working towards perfection. Because it can excuse quite a lot of things.
Yeah, because if I'm going to be seeking perfection, and perfection is inherently a good thing, then anything I do in order to achieve that is thus a good thing as well, even if it's monstrous.
It would be the perfect thing to do, because you are working to achieve perfection, which that in itself is a perfect thing to be doing.
And so suddenly you're justifying all sorts of horrible things. I guess Nomad does a little bit of that. Murder of billions. Because I am perfect and they are not, and thus my perfection demands it. Otherwise, I will not be perfect.
In the end of this episode, where Nomad assumes itself to be perfect and therefore all of its actions are justified, kind of exemplifies what can be the issue with this paradoxical version of achievable perfection. The episode's kind of telling you that perfection, or the quest for perfection, is inherently dangerous and possibly deadly.
It is sort of a difference of values. You make perfection your core value, and it starts driving you in a certain course of behaviors. Well, if your value is basically anything else, you're going to do things like, hey, life is probably a pretty good thing, we shouldn't be murdering.
They're very critical of, the scientist before this. They do it as almost an aside, talking about the Roy Kirk guy. The only reason they have that scene in there is to explain how the names are similar and the robot got confused.
Yes.
But they're very critical of him as a person seeking perfection, which is interesting in this kind of idea. It's not something that you would particularly expect someone to espouse, as seeking perfection is inherently negative. I guess it's a very Western idea of the time of don't try to be perfect, just do things. It's a very man of action style way of thinking.
Trying to become perfect means you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, whatever that might be.
Because there's definitely a little bit of a more what we would call Eastern tradition of dedicating yourself to the perfection of a task or ambition. Like the old style of craftsmanship, where you would dedicate yourself to creating this perfect object, knowing that you would never achieve this, but kind of spending your time doing it as more of a meditative practice. That I suppose in the West, trying to be perfect is wrong. I suppose it kind of negates consumer capitalism and mass production. So this would be somewhat in contrast to what people would kind of think of as platonic perfection.
Sort of a idealized, almost otherworldly, concept that, anything that actually exists in the world is a pale imitation of.
Yeah, but not in it's not framed in his thinking as this kind of bleak, the world is a pale imitation of perfection. It's more of an aspirational, anything you do, imagine the perfect version of that thing, and then try to imitate it.
So, and in physics, there's sort of ways to sort of approach problems that help, approximate real world situations by generating the basic concepts, mentally of, sort of idealized situations and, materials, whatever. And then you use those to sort of start working the various, physics at play, so you can get a first pass approximation of what should be happening in the situation. And from there, you can sort of refine that to get closer and closer to the real world, adding in more factors that are, effectively less idealized, less, semi-platonically perfect here, in order to sort of, increase your odds of actually getting the answer correct. And it's sort of interesting that, it's very much used as a tool in this case, as opposed to an aspiration of this is where we're going to try to force the system to be.
Well, that's what's kind of interesting with this, going along with this other article I was reading recently called The Scientific Blind Spot, where the kind of basic problem that you tend to hit when you treat perfection as something that you can use as a tool is it's still something that a human being has to conceive of.
Indeed.
And that brings an inherent amount of human bias into the situation.
So our fallibility will always screw something up.
And that's kind of the idea with the scientific blind spot, is we want science and math to be completely objective things that just exist. But they can't be, because no matter how hard you try to eliminate your biases or your variables or whatever, no matter what you do, the basic ideas that you are working are based off of a human perception of what we know as reality.
Correct.
So there's no way to fundamentally know anything outside of what we are capable of perceiving.
Yeah.
Even if you go with like a physics model, even with a lot of modern quantum physics, or you're getting into these interesting things like, the observation of something changes its basic form and function in the universe. Well, of course it does, because you couldn't even start measuring it before you observed it.
And so, the whole concept of wave function collapse, it's like, okay, we have, was it actually in that state beforehand? We just weren't unable to tell, or is it actually in multiple states at the same time? And it's kind of hard to sort of imagine what that actually would look like. But, to a certain degree, it doesn't really matter as well, because we got lots of tricks to sort of work around that problem. But it does sort of lead to all sorts of fun things like different interpretations of quantum mechanics, and I could go into those at some point with you. But I think that's getting a little divergence from the conversation here.
Yeah, but no matter what you do, everything still has to be based on a human perspective and human observation and humans' ability to measure things. Mm-hmm. Which kind of, like, there's another of my favorite Sir Terry Pratchett quotes. The general consensus dignified with the name reality.
Rather apt, yes. I mentioned World of Darkness earlier. This actually does kind of remind me a little bit as well of, I think it was Mage of the Ascension. One of the sort of conceits is that, to a certain degree, the reality in the game there is very much shaped by the consensus of the people within it, and the fact that in the modern world there's a sort of there's general rules, there's this is how things sort of work and things like that, is a product of that. These rules have been sort of decided over a long period of time by the consensus, and as the wizards, who are basically like, yeah, that's not how actually things work, break these rules, that just causes all sorts of weirdness. And so it's sort of interesting sort of play on that concept that this is how things work, and that also creates not just the perception of how things work, but how the world actually works, except for those people that are able to break the rules. But once again, I'm diverging.
Well, it interestingly reminds me of a thing that I was looking at yesterday that was making some points as to the very notion that even something like language so defines the way that we think, it actually completely alters our perceptions of reality. And they're doing research now. I'm forgetting the name of the theory offhand, but they've been doing research now that it seems like being able to speak a different language can give you kind of a fundamentally different view on the nature of the world.
A little bit more than just, you have more words that describe X or Y things. The context, how things sort of fit together in the language, and sort of provide a certain amount of bias for thinking in one direction or another.
Yeah, and also just kind of the way that different words describe different things, because you can translate something into English, but you're using the closest approximation of an English word that probably has a much different meaning than the original language word would have.
There are some terms that also don't translate at all, or translate in very funny fashions.
Well, just think about like a few years ago when people first started using Schadenfreude as the like German import word. Like, how often did anyone think about something like that before this? And then afterward, it's basically 90% of what anyone talks about online.
It's quite a mimetic spread there. An infection of a bit of knowledge. And then suddenly everyone starts like, oh yeah, I guess we do sort of have this weird habit. And I guess we're going to sort of maybe indulge it more because, haha.
So, if we circle back, I kind of had this interesting idea when I was watching this episode that if Nomad was capable of actually wiping out all sentient life in the galaxy like it wants, it wouldn't be able to achieve perfection because it would have destroyed the basic concept of perfection as a human concept. Because it's something that humans invented and is unique to like the way humans think. Even if another, sentient animal has a concept of perfection, it's probably going to be a different concept than the one we have. Like our idea of perfection that we're talking about is something that we invented.
So, a different life form, different creatures, be they, your bunny rabbit over there or that Klingon over there, it's going to give us a different perspective on it. But but here's another question on that then. What if Nomad starts considering itself human?
Well, it can't because it considers humans imperfect.
But it talks about the biological units. Doesn't really say you guys are humans. It's more of like you guys are like fleshy stuff, I guess.
That's true. It could consider itself the perfect human.
Yes. For some definition of human.
No, that was the thing, and it was fine. But it kind of ruined the way that they wrapped up the episode for me a little bit. The definitional idea of perfection that's being presented in this episode from the perspective of Nomad is that Nomad is perfection. That is the measure by which it is judging perfection in other things. Nomad is perfect.
Yes, if you are not at least this perfect, which is impossible, then you are imperfect and thus must be destroyed. Or used for my purposes.
But if you point out that Nomad is imperfect, that can't be true. It is definitionally impossible. So this shouldn't have worked.
It should have, to a certain degree, tried to come up with a roundabout way to deny the evidence right in front of its face.
It arguably would have just gone, you are wrong. I am perfect. You don't know who you are.
Yes. You are not my creator, clearly. You are a liar. And, this has all been a ruse, and so I must destroy you now.
Yeah, or just like, I decided you're my creator. I am perfect. You are my creator. And nothing you say is going to change that.
Yeah, also workable.
Also, the fact that it said it could improve and repair the ship gets you to a weird place with that. Because if things that are imperfect have to be destroyed, then it should just destroy the ship instead of improving it until it's the point where it's, passably perfect.
Well, it does sort of, seem to be driving its, crusade mainly against organic sort of structures. So maybe it views things like spaceships as tools as opposed to entities that must be, destroyed.
But it should have been able to repair itself then.
True.
When the mistake is pointed out, it'll go, oh, you're right, mistake corrected, now perfect again.
I'm going to, I've been damaged by these outside forces. Oh no, I'm going to go fix that. You have tried to compromise my imperfection, but I've thwarted your attempts. Haha, foolish mortals.
This is the thing that you get into with these. They talk about something like perfection or like what is opinion, what is music, and they don't give you anything.
Just like, well, we're going to ask some questions, but it's really up to you guys to figure this out. So, Kepwin, what is music?
No idea. I'm not musical.
All right. I'm going to say something about, a series of tones that are arranged in a certain, pattern that are meant to, elicit some sort of reaction from a listener.
This is the thing. We actually kind of got to this in the discussion that I was having yesterday about perfection. It's like music and art are definitionally useful in the same way that perfection is definitionally useful. It is a thing that you can't define.
Yes. What is art? What is music other than, the very technical dry version I just gave you as far as the definition goes?
Yeah.
Because, technically someone running a belt sander is going to cause an emotional response from someone eventually, because that's really annoying, and it's a rhythmic pattern of sounds.
And people have used that. There's Dadaist music that has used things like sandpaper and similar to create non-tonal noise music that you can define as music because it's like they said it was music, so you have to consider it as such, at least far enough to discount it.
You got music concrete, which is pretty weird stuff. You got like super old school industrial. I mean, like not industrial rock like Nine Inch Nails, but like we're going to have some weird sounds, and they're going to be kind of like sound like a factory or something like that. That kind of stuff. And then you got things like more modern like. People are familiar with the term hardcore techno and things like that. But there's like stuff that goes even way beyond that to like noisecore and terrorcore, which are just kind of painful to listen to, but they're kind of music. But it kind of really stretches the definition as far as general people are willing to go. But it's music to somebody. So it counts.
It doesn't even have to be music to somebody. You just have the entire thing with like music, art, etc. as definitional things is the debate about what they are is part of the thing.
Yes.
Like the idea that you can take a blank canvas and put it in the museum and say that you now must consider this as art and talk about it is part of the purpose.
Yeah. It is to a certain question thing, it's the asking of the question. It is, what is and what is not, and does that question even make sense sometimes?
Well, see, it's the thing with the question always makes sense, and the thing that doesn't make sense is assuming that it has an answer.
Sometimes things don't.
Lots of things don't. It's one of the reasons that you get into problems when you hit things like these, like, super logic beings that they like to present in science fiction.
Sometimes, it'd be nice to run into something that realizes the world's a very messy place.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's an odd one. I can understand it from our modern way of thinking, but like humans are not like made of logic or something. We are inherently emotional, and most everything we do mentally is based on some version of that. Logic is more of a definitional structure that you use to explain things.
A tool, not necessarily the core of ourselves. Well, we've done pretty deep dive here, actually.
Well, like sometimes when you have to stretch to find what they were talking about, you get more interesting stuff.
I got something else to mention, for a little bit, if you're
all
up
right.
To it. So are you familiar with the term von Neumann probe?
No. Sounds uncomfortable.
Well, it can be. So the basic idea of a von Neumann probe is to allow some sort of civilization to explore a large region of space via robots. They send out a few probes, and then they find resources out there and start replicating, and then they do this over and over and over again.
Ah, so it's the self-replication
Yes.
probe. That was an episode of Justice League of America.
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily saying that Nomad here is a von Neumann probe, but it does have some behavior similar to a variation on it called a berserker, which is a term that came out of actually a literature, I believe, originally by someone named Fred Saberhagen, something like that. I'm mispronouncing his name. Sorry. But you get these self-replicating probes out there. They go out there and basically murder everything else, other than the original aliens, hopefully. And so as we sort of go through this episode, I'm like thinking, all right, so a lot of, it's like, okay, they say this sort of soil sample thing and it's sterilizing that, but I'm like, that only kind of makes sense because, how do you go from, sterilize soil samples to sterilize everything, even with, sort of weird twisted logic? I guess it kind of makes sense kind of in the context of the show, but the result is still kind of the same, that Nomad has become effectively a non-replicating version of this, berserker sort of probe, at least so far. Who knows, there might be a whole bunch of other ones out there floating, somewhere deep in space. It's gone out and taken up, accidentally perhaps, a crusade to destroy all forms of life everywhere except its homeworld, which it might still do anyway.
Well, they do make this inference that whatever alien probe it came into contact with would have been capable of self-repair, but also integrating other things into itself.
almost like it's alive, like it's living, like it's integrating strange alien technologies into it, almost like it's co-opting their civilization, their uniqueness, like some sort of, I don't know, Borg or something.
Something like that. That also is known for scooping up soil samples.
As well as the buildings around them.
It's an interesting one. Now that you mention it, like, the thing that they were getting into was very, very English language logic. Because they took two concepts. They took seek out life and sterilize soil samples and smushed them together so that the words created seek out life and sterilize.
Yeah. You sort of cut it in a certain way, and
that makes sense with the like weird fuzziness of English, but it wouldn't make sense if you're working with something that's supposed to be a purely logical being.
Maybe it's a matter of the programming languages involved. What was it? Is it Lisp? That's like sort of conversational as far as its terminology.
There's like a certain school of computer science that wants to push more for English language programming, or real language programming, I guess they would call it.
Yeah, and add 5 to this, subtract that, and put this in that data, and sort of similar, straightforward, English language sort of terms, as opposed to equal sign, brackets, random function name, do this, plus, semicolon.
Woe betide thee who forgets the semicolon.
Yes. Some weird stuff can happen if you're not careful. I've done it. Yeah. So there might be some funky product with that, but also the Nomad probe itself was supposed to be an advanced AI of some sort, which would maybe imply that it's not using a simplified programming language like that. But hypothetically, you want to go semi close to machine language, so you can make full use of it and allow it to be a complete entity on a very limited hardware footprint.
It's weird how they keep running into human-made AIs all over the place.
Yeah. Landrew, though, was he alien, though?
They weren't unclear.
Okay.
They do sort of an odd thing with this one where they don't care whether Nomad is sentient or not.
It's like, well, it's a menace, and we gotta sort of contain it and then figure it out and hope it doesn't kill us all.
They never talk about it at all. I was thinking, like, this kind of also, just since it's basically the only other thing in the episode with the AI, is it's an interesting demonstration of kind of what seem to be the two major philosophical thinkings on artificial intelligence, which are either the kind of Turing version, which is you're never going to know and that doesn't matter, or the other version, which was like the Chinese room idea of no matter how much it seems like it knows, it is never possible to be artificially intelligent. So you have one where it's like you're never going to figure it out, so who cares, and one that's it's just not possible ever. Though I suppose like the Turing one makes a lot more sense with how we judge, sentience in others. Like, I have no particular way of knowing you're sentient, except for you seem very similar to me and you act in a similar way, and I'm pretty sure that I'm sentient.
I'm actually a haunted potato. Sorry.
But you could be a sentient haunted potato.
Shh, don't tell anyone. That freak people out.
You're a haunted potato that can pass the Turing test. Wasn't that the end of Portal 2?
Pretty close, actually. Now I kind of want to play Portal again.
I think when we start going on about video games, it's probably a good time to say that we should wrap it up.
Yeah, so maybe we should move on to some sort of I should finish tabulating these points here, and we can move on to that section.
Yes, something like the galaxy's favorite game show. Woo!
Hey everybody, I have finished up tallying the various points for everybody that was in today's episode, and we got some prizes to give out here. The first award is the Everybody Loves Robots Award, which goes to Nomad for being a mobile, mechanical, intelligent being of some sort with a thirst for mass murder. What does he win, Gepwin?
Nomad wins one of those cute robot dogs that they sold at Sharper Image during like the mid-90s and early thousands. Everyone loved those things, and they were cute and trendy.
Woof woof, and yeah, adorable. Ho-ho. Our second award is slightly related, but kind of not. The Hard Drive Brain Award, which goes to Uhura for getting her mind completely erased, probably destroying every semblance of her personality and history and memories from when she grew up and all that fun stuff, but being okay in time for next episode all the same. What does she win, Gepwin?
Uhura wins a year's free cloud storage. If she had a backup, this wouldn't have happened. Back up your data and brain.
Back up your data, including your brain data. It'll be very useful someday when you run into alien probes that are not quite alien probes. Our third award goes once again to Kirk. It's the Talk It to Death Award, because he does seem to be doing that again. What does he win, Gepwood?
Kirk wins his very own daytime talk show where no computer is safe.
Oh, Kirk, I think you're going to be a well-watched show, but maybe one where the computers try to avoid you. I hope I hope for their sakes their agents are good enough to keep them away.
No, thanks to all of our contestants for joining us. I hope they enjoy their prizes and join us next week on the Galaxy's favorite game show. Next week is pretty famous.
One of the more famous episodes.
It's one that I'm looking forward to a little more. This is probably one of the 2 episodes of the original series that I have seen more than once.
Is the other one involving tribbles?
Yes, it is.
So next week's episode's not involving tribbles, guys.
No, this one doesn't involve tribbles at all.
It does involve a transporter accident.
Yes, transporter accident, skimpier outfits, leather.
Leather, yeah. So seems like my kind of party. Where do I sign up?
Some really, really cool knives.
Blades, knives, some facial hair.
Yes, the origin of the facial hair. And something that they used later in a very awkward way in DS9.
A few times, yeah.
All right, next week is the original series episode Mirror Mirror.
But not on the wall, just mirror mirror.
Yes, where Kirk and company are accidentally transported to the alternate mirror universe, where instead of being good old-fashioned helpful people, Earth has become some sort of fascist military dictatorship.
Oh dear. Let's try to avoid that future.
In space.
In space.
With goatees.
With goatees.
Yeah. Interesting. This starts the whole alternate universe thing in Star Trek. They use it later in DS9. Oddly, my absolute favorite use of this was actually the 2-part episode of Star Trek Enterprise.
I recall there being a mirror universe bit in Enterprise, but I never saw that one myself. So you're saying it's good?
Yeah, I would argue it's one of the only episodes worth watching. The only problem is you have to know who the characters are, because that's the whole idea. Is that these are the alternate evil universe versions of the characters. But they set the entire thing in the alternate universe. They even changed the theme song intro to be the evil Terran Empire Star Trek. And it's just the actors from Enterprise actually getting to act and chew the scenery and do all of the weird alternate universe evil fascist stuff, and it's very good.
Wait, we're gonna be ridiculous versions of ourselves? Sweet.
But you get something similar here, but the same amount of scenery chewing is normal.
Because they already chew the scenery pretty well here.
I think we're gonna have some good things to talk about, though. It's gonna be another good evil episode.
Are you good or evil?
Well, you can find out when you join us next week on Watchers of Tomorrow.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, we ask the question, are you evil because you have a goatee? Or do you have a goatee because you're evil? You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.